Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Ben here, and today I wanted to record a video where I just didn't really script anything, and I just wanted to react to some news that has really affected me, If you haven't seen, it was announced today that Microsoft is closing Tango Gameworks and Arkane Austin, which means that we won't be getting another Evil Within game, a Hi-Fi Rush game, Ghostwire Tokyo game. I don't know if we'll be getting another Dishonored or Prey. Arkane Leon is still in business. They're the ones that made Deathloop and I can't remember the other one, but they're safe for now. This is probably one of the most depressing pieces of news I've seen in a while, because The Evil Within is my second or third favorite game of all time. I go back and forth between, obviously Alan Wake's my number one game. Evil Within and Last of Us are my number 2 and number 3, depending on when you ask me. But we've been wanting a sequel for Evil Within for so long now. If any of you have watched my sequel video, where I talked about the 11 games we desperately need a sequel for, it was my number one. It was my number one request. And in that video I predicted, I put a scale of 1 to 10 on whether I thought it was going to get a sequel, and I gave it a 10 out of 10. Oh man, how much I trusted Microsoft is just pathetic. And I will never forgive Microsoft for this, because they have this track record of destroying every single game that I love in my life. Gears of War, how long has it been since we've seen Gears of War? I mean, they should have prioritized that series coming out at least every couple years. Alan Wake, they didn't want to support Alan Wake 2 back in the day, so we didn't get the true sequel that we would have got back then. Instead, we had to wait 13 years for a sequel that it just betrays the original in almost every way. And now Evil Within. Now they're closing down Tango Gameworks, and we'll never get Evil Within 3. Shinji Mikami had left the company, so it's very likely we would have never gotten an Evil Within like the first game. That's my all-time favorite one. I still had hope because Jeff Johannes had made he was the director on Evil Within 2. And that was a really good game. Not as good as Evil Within 1, but I still had hope that maybe he would have brought it back to closer to being like the original, to where it was a little less open world, more linear, a little more gritty. But now that just won't happen. And it seems like he was even surprised by this news. Maybe not, but based on his tweet, it seems like maybe he either found out from this tweet, or he had maybe known it might have been coming. Who knows? We're not inside those companies. I think Microsoft really needs to consider moving on from Phil Spencer. I think he's one of the worst executives of all time. He kind of tricked us in the beginning. I felt like he kind of duped us, because Don Matrick made such a terrible decision at the beginning of the Xbox One era with the whole quote, well, we've got an Xbox 360 if you want to play that.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device. I mean, seriously, when I read the blogs and thought about who's really the most impacted, there was a person who said, hey, I'm on a nuclear sub. Right. And I don't even know what it means to be on a nuclear sub, but I've got to imagine that it's not easy to get an internet connection.
All Phil Spencer had to do was come in and just reverse that decision. There was no other decision to make, and everybody gave him so much credit. They're like, wow, he's the savior. And then he goes and buys all these studios. We're like, oh man, we're going to have all the exclusive games. And he's done nothing with it. I think Hellblade is like the first game that's coming out from the studios that he bought. I mean, what happened to the We Happy Few developer, Compulsion Games? What happened to them? Where the fuck are they? I mean, come on. They made such a cool game, like premise. It just had a little bit of jank to it. And I was always so hopeful on what they could do with the AAA budget. And just thinking about Ghostwire Tokyo never getting a sequel, Hi-Fi Rush never getting a sequel, Evil Within especially never getting its third game. that IP had the potential to rival Resident Evil and Dead Space. It was that good. The story in Evil Within, obviously in my opinion, is one of my favorite stories of all time, the first game. When you first play it, it's a little bit confusing. But after you play it a second time, and then especially after you play the DLCs, it's so good. It's so in-depth and intricate. The storyline, like, it weaves in and out of itself. I love how in the DLC you're playing as Kidman, and you see what she was doing during the main game. It's kind of like the Resident Evil 4 Ada Wong DLCs, and those are amazing too. I love those type of DLCs. But that DLC made Evil Within have one of the best stories. Like, it solidified that as such a complete and awesome story. And it's just depressing thinking about how we won't get anything to follow that up. Sebastian, one of my favorite characters, named my son after him, is just dead now. Microsoft has literally killed Sebastian and the Evil Within. And I honestly don't think I'll ever forgive them. And after they had not released Alan Wake 2 for a long time, and then they sold the rights back to Remedy, I was like, they clearly don't give a shit about any of my taste anymore. So I was like, I'm moving over to the PS4. And Control was the very first game I played on my PS4, especially because you got the DLC first on the PlayStation. And I'm so glad I made that change, because Microsoft is literally just nothing now. They're just a Game Pass machine that gives us a lot of free indie games to play on Game Pass. I do like that, but I think I'm really considering not buying an Xbox console again and just getting Game Pass on PC, because I just don't like them as a company anymore. They piss me off, man. They literally destroy everything I love in gaming. And I wouldn't feel comfortable if I was any other company at Microsoft now. And what if Hellblade Senua's Saga comes out and it doesn't do very good? Are they the next company to be shut down? I mean, I just saw a tweet from the Arkane Leon lead, and he didn't seem very happy about it. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, you better watch what you say, man. You're going to be next. Microsoft, I wouldn't feel comfortable working for any company under Microsoft anymore. If I was a developer, I'd be putting in applications to anywhere outside of Microsoft, indie developer, anywhere else but there, because they actually care about staying in business, and they're not just going to sell off people's lives for money. Well, guys, just want to hop in, do this real quick while my emotions were fresh, and just talk about how disappointing this is. The only thing that they could combat this with is maybe firing Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond. I do not like them too. Whenever I see them on the screen, I'm just like, you're annoying. You're literally annoying, and I don't like you. And you don't care about the games that you're making, the companies that you're making, or anybody else. So why don't you just go work for the Surface team or Microsoft Windows? Because you literally don't care about games. You suck. You suck at your job. You're terrible to look at. I just don't want to see you anymore. So, all right, guys, I'm going to get out of here before I say anything meaner than that. And until next time, stay in the light, my friends. Later.